The Galactic Bureau of Interplanetary Revenue Collection had committed exactly one clerical error in its 93-billion-year history of extracting taxes from every oxygen-breathing, carbon-based and silicon-enhanced life form in the known universe. This singular mistake would result in the most catastrophically hilarious military disaster since the infamous Buttercup incident of the Vegan sector, where an entire armada was defeated by a particularly aggressive garden. In the sprawling bureaucratic labyrinth that was the Cosmic Accounting Division's sub-department of planetary debt assessment, junior taxation specialist Binglebury Wobblethwaite had been having what could generously be described as a rough millennium. His species, the Flibbernaut of Rigel 7, were renowned throughout the galaxy for their mathematical precision, their attention to detail, and their complete inability to handle caffeine without experiencing what humans might recognize as a psychotic break. Unfortunately, Binglebury had discovered Earth coffee. On the fateful Tuesday when the great mistake occurred, Binglebury was approximately 17 cups deep into what he believed was productivity enhancement fluid, and vibrating at a frequency that made nearby furniture question its structural integrity. His tentacles, normally capable of operating 47 different calculation devices simultaneously, were now twitching with the sort of manic energy typically reserved for hummingbirds on amphetamines. "Must process more tax documents," he shrieked at his holographic filing system, his 17 eyes dilating and contracting in patterns that resembled a disco ball having an existential crisis. "Productivity is maximum. Efficiency is through the roof. Why is everything so loud?" It was in this caffeine-induced state of hyperactive incompetence that Binglebury encountered Form 42B, Planetary Debt Assessment for Unauthorized Atmospheric Usage. The planet in question was Hearth, a resort world in the Tau Ceti system populated entirely by wealthy tax evaders who had been running illegal timeshare scams across 17 different star systems. But Binglebury's coffee-addled brain saw Hearth and typed Earth. The bill that materialized from this cosmic typo was, by any reasonable standard, astronomically ridiculous. 42,637,891,204,763 credits, plus interest compounding daily since the planet's formation, plus late fees, plus administrative processing charges, plus a convenience fee for using hyperspace mail delivery, plus tax on the tax. The alleged crime: unauthorized breathing of premium-grade oxygen without proper atmospheric usage permits, environmental impact assessments, or galactic EPA compliance certificates. When the bill arrived on Earth via quantum courier, signature required, it landed with a resounding thud in the mailbox of one Harold Wigglesworth, a retired accountant from Poughkeepsie who had been enjoying a perfectly ordinary Tuesday morning until the fabric of space-time decided to deliver him the most expensive piece of mail in human history. Harold stared at the document, which was written in 17 different galactic languages and seemed to glow with an ominous purple light that hurt his eyes and made his coffee taste like regret. "Martha," he called to his wife, who was in the kitchen attempting to make sense of their monthly cable bill, "there's something here from the, Galactic Bureau of Interplanetary Revenue Collection." "Oh, for crying out loud, Harold, what did you sign us up for now? Was it another timeshare presentation? I told you those free weekends in the Bahamas are never actually free." "No, dear, I think this is different. It says here we owe $42 trillion for—" "And breathing. Breathing. Harold Wigglesworth, if you signed us up for some kind of oxygen subscription service without telling me, I swear I'll—" The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of senior tax collector Grimbaldi Flusterwhisk, who materialized in their living room with the sort of dramatic flair that suggested he had been practicing his intimidation techniques in front of a mirror. Grimbaldi was a Zephyrian from the bureaucracy sector, a species that had evolved beyond the need for physical forms and now existed as pure administrative anxiety made manifest. He appeared as a swirling cloud of paperwork, filing cabinets, and the sort of oppressive energy that made people want to check their receipts. "Greetings, Earth creatures!" His voice boomed with the authority of someone who had never been told no in his entire existence. "I am here to discuss your outstanding debt to the Galactic Revenue Service." Harold, who had dealt with the IRS and therefore believed himself prepared for any bureaucratic nightmare, adjusted his reading glasses and peered at the floating cloud of administrative menace. "Now see here, Mr. Flusterwhisk, there must be some mistake. We've never signed up for any galactic anything. We don't even have cable in half the bedrooms." "Mistake?" Grimbaldi's form pulsed with indignation. "The Galactic Bureau of Interplanetary Revenue Collection does not make mistakes. You have been breathing premium oxygen for your entire planetary existence without proper permits. The fee is non-negotiable." Martha emerged from the kitchen wielding a rolling pin, with the sort of expression that had once made a door-to-door salesman reconsider his career choices. "Listen here, you. A bureaucratic poltergeist. Nobody told us we needed permits to breathe. What's next? A license to blink? A subscription service for our heartbeats?" "Actually," Grimbaldi replied with the enthusiasm of someone who genuinely enjoyed ruining people's days, "heartbeat regulation falls under the Department of Biological Function Oversight. That's a completely different bureau. You'll want to speak to Jibberwocky Blamflizzle in Section 94Q. "No." This exchange would have continued indefinitely, except for the sudden arrival of Harold and Martha's neighbor, Gertrude Pumpernickel, a retired librarian who had developed the remarkable ability to solve any problem through the strategic application of common sense and persistent annoyance. "What in the Sam Hill is all that noise about?" she demanded, marching through the front door without knocking, as was her established right as the neighborhood's unofficial crisis management specialist. "I could hear the yelling from 3 houses away. Harold, did you finally snap and start arguing with the television again?" "No, Gertrude," Harold replied wearily. "We apparently owe $42 trillion to, aliens." Gertrude looked at Grimbaldi, who was still hovering in the middle of the living room like a very angry filing cabinet, then at the glowing tax bill, then back at Grimbaldi. "You're aliens?" she asked with the sort of tone typically reserved for people who had just discovered that their mailman was actually 3 raccoons in a trench coat. "We are the Galactic Bureau of Interplanetary Revenue Collection," Grimbaldi announced. "We are here to collect legitimate taxes owed by this planet." "Uh-huh," Gertrude nodded slowly. "And you need $42 trillion because unauthorized oxygen consumption." "I see. And who authorized you to charge us for breathing our own air?" "The Galactic Federation, of course." "And when did we join this Galactic Federation?" There was a pause, a very long pause. The sort of pause that typically occurs when someone realizes they've been arguing from a fundamentally flawed position. You must be members," Grimbaldi stammered. "All oxygen-breathing planets are automatically enrolled." "Show me the paperwork," Gertrude demanded, with the tone of someone who had spent 40 years dealing with overdue library books and understood the power of proper documentation. Another pause. This one was longer and accompanied by what sounded suspiciously like nervous paper shuffling from within Grimbaldi's swirling form. "The paperwork is filed in the Central Galactic Archives." "Then go get it," Gertrude said simply. "I'll wait." It was at this moment that Grimbaldi made the critical error that would doom his entire operation. He decided to escalate the situation by calling in military support. Within the hour, the communication had reached the 47th Unstoppable Battle Fleet, currently under the command of General Maximus Blunderbuss, a Therovian warrior whose military strategy consisted entirely of overwhelming confidence, backed by what he believed to be superior firepower. General Blunderbuss was the sort of military leader who inspired confidence in his subordinates primarily through his ability to blame any failure on atmospheric interference, quantum fluctuations, or the inherent unreliability of enemy surrender protocols. He had earned his position through a combination of political connections, remarkable luck, and a complete inability to recognize when he was in over his head. "Attention, officers of the 47th Unstoppable Battle Fleet," he announced to his assembled command staff, which consisted of Admiral Thumpertwist, Colonel Bafflegab, Captain Jibberjaw, and a strategic planning computer that had been trying to transfer to the accounting department for the past 18 years. "Today we face our greatest challenge." The holographic display showed Earth in all its blue-green glory, rotating peacefully and completely unaware that it was about to become the target of the most overconfident military operation in galactic history. "Intelligence reports indicate," Blunderbuss continued, reading from notes that had been prepared by someone who clearly knew more about military strategy than he did, "that this Earth is populated by primitive bipedal creatures who have barely mastered basic spaceflight. Their most advanced weapons appear to be chemical explosives and projectile firearms." Admiral Thumpertwist raised what might have been a hand if his species had possessed such appendages. "Sir, perhaps we should consider that their species has managed to split the atom, develop nuclear weapons, and achieve limited space exploration." "Nonsense!" Blunderbuss's confidence could have powered a small star destroyer. "We possess the Devastation Ray Mark 9. We have quantum disruptor cannons. We have the Reality Adjustment Beam version 3. In 7, what could these primitive humans possibly possess that could threaten the most technologically advanced military force in 17 different star systems? The answer, as fate would have it, was creativity, stubbornness, and an inexplicably large supply of duct tape. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. The 47th Unstoppable Battle Fleet departed their staging area with tremendous fanfare and even greater certainty of victory. General Blunderbuss had wagered his entire pension, his military reputation, and his collection of vintage war medals that Earth would surrender within 6 hours of their arrival. His exact words, recorded for posterity by the fleet's historical documentation system, were, "I'll have these primitive humans begging for mercy faster than you can say atmospheric interference. This will be the shortest military campaign in galactic history." The universe, as anyone familiar with the works of Douglas Adams would recognize, has a peculiar sense of humor regarding such confident predictions. Meanwhile, on Earth, nobody was paying the slightest attention to the approaching alien armada because it was Oktoberfest season in Munich, and Heinrich Gutenberg was far too busy conducting what he called advanced fermentation research to notice that several thousand alien warships were rapidly approaching his planet. Heinrich Gutenberg was a man of simple pleasures, beer, bratwurst, and the sort of mechanical tinkering that he referred to as German engineering, but which was essentially the art of making things work through sheer determination and liberal application of duct tape. His brewery, Gutenberg's Gravitational Gutbuster Beverages, occupied a special place in Bavarian culture, as the establishment that served beer so strong it was technically classified as a controlled substance in 12 different countries. Heinrich's latest project was the creation of what he called Schwarzbier rocket fuel, a beer so potent that it could theoretically be used as spacecraft propulsion. He had been working on this particular recipe for the better part of 3 years, and his experimental batches had produced some interesting side effects: levitating pretzels, spontaneous yodeling, and at least one incident where a tourist had briefly achieved the ability to see through time. On the morning that would later be known throughout the galaxy as the day everything went sideways, Heinrich was putting the finishing touches on his masterpiece. The experimental batch was bubbling away in a specially constructed vat that he had built using plans downloaded from the internet. materials purchased from the local hardware store, and what he confidently referred to as inspiration from the beer gods. "Ach, mein Gott!" Heinrich exclaimed, as he observed his creation through a pair of safety goggles he had borrowed from his neighbor's welding shop. "Either I have finally perfected the ultimate beer, or I have accidentally created something that will revolutionize human understanding of physics." The beer was glowing, not metaphorically glowing with potential, but literally emitting a soft golden light that seemed to pulse in rhythm with Heinrich's heartbeat. The vat was also hovering approximately 3 feet off the ground and making sounds that resembled Gregorian chanting mixed with the hum of a well-tuned engine. "This is either the greatest achievement in the history of brewing," Heinrich continued, addressing his experimental beer as if it were a dear friend, "or I'm about to become the first person in history to accidentally create sentient alcohol." It was at this precise moment that the 47th Unstoppable Battle Fleet chose to make their grand entrance into Earth's atmosphere. General Blunderbuss had planned what he considered to be a masterpiece of psychological warfare. The fleet would decloak simultaneously above all major population centers, project terrifying holographic displays of their superior weaponry, and broadcast a surrender ultimatum in every Earth language that would leave the planet's leaders with no choice but immediate and unconditional capitulation. What actually happened was that they decloaked directly above Heinrich's brewery at the peak of Oktoberfest's busiest weekend. The crowd of approximately 50,000 slightly intoxicated festival-goers looked up, saw the massive alien warships filling the sky, and reacted in the most human way possible. They cheered, started taking selfies, and immediately began speculating about whether this was some kind of incredibly elaborate promotional stunt. "Look at that!" shouted Brunhilde Hammerschlag, Heinrich's neighbor and the mayor of their small Bavarian town. "They've brought flying beer halls. What will these festival organizers think of next? I bet they have alien beer," added Klaus Sauerkraut, a local festival regular who was renowned for his ability to identify the alcohol content of any beverage by taste alone. "This is the best Oktoberfest ever." General Blunderbuss stared at his tactical display in complete bewilderment. According to his instruments, the humans below were not cowering in fear, evacuating in panic, or preparing for military resistance. They were celebrating. "Sir," reported Captain Jibberjaw from the communications station, his voice carrying the sort of confusion typically reserved for people who had just discovered that their GPS was giving directions in ancient Sumerian. "We're receiving thousands of communication signals from the surface. They appear to be invitations." "Invitations to what?" Blunderbuss demanded, his confidence beginning to show its first hairline cracks. "To something they call Oktoberfest, sir. They seem to think we're here for a party." The general felt what his species experienced as the onset of a migraine, though for Therovians this manifested as a violent purple color that tasted like administrative paperwork and made a sound like filing cabinets falling downstairs. "Fire a warning shot," he ordered. "Show these primitive creatures the awesome power of our advanced technology." The Devastation Ray Mark 9 powered up with an impressive display of lights, energy discharges, and the sort of ominous humming that typically preceded spectacular destruction. The targeting system locked onto what appeared to be a significant energy source emanating from the festival grounds below. What happened next would be studied by xenobiologists, quantum physicists, brewery enthusiasts, and military strategists for the next several centuries. The Devastation Ray's energy beam struck Heinrich's experimental beer vat with pinpoint accuracy, expecting to create a demonstration of overwhelming firepower that would convince the humans to surrender immediately. Instead, Heinrich's Schwarzbier rocket fuel reacted to the alien energy like a quantum physicist with a bad attitude and access to the fundamental forces of the universe. The result was not destruction, but rather the most magnificent explosion of flavor in galactic history. A massive mushroom cloud of the most delicious aroma ever experienced by any sentient being rose into the atmosphere, engulfing the alien fleet in what could only be described as weaponized Gemütlichkeit, a cloud of pure Bavarian friendliness so concentrated that it could induce spontaneous happiness in any life form within a 50-mile radius. Within seconds, every alien aboard every ship was experiencing something their species had never encountered, the uncontrollable urge to be really, really friendly. "Sir!" gasped Admiral Thumper-Twist, now displaying what appeared to be a genuine smile for the first time in his 200-year military career. I'm experiencing unprecedented levels of contentment. This is terrible." "Maintain battle stations," Blunderbuss ordered, though he himself was beginning to feel an alarming sense of goodwill toward all living creatures. "We are here to collect taxes, not to... Why does everyone down there look so pleasant?" Colonel Bafflegab burst into the command center, his normally stern expression replaced by something that resembled the face of someone who had just discovered that puppies existed. "Sir, the crew is... They're asking if they can go to the festival. Half the engineering department has already requested shore leave. The weapons specialists are wondering if we brought anything to contribute to the party." Heinrich, meanwhile, was staring at the results of his accidental masterpiece with the expression of a man who had just realized he might have solved the fundamental problem of universal peace through the strategic application of really good beer. "Mein Gott in Himmel!" he shouted to the cheering crowd around him. "I have created happiness in a bottle. This is either the greatest discovery in human history, or I have been sampling way too much of my own product." The alien fleet, now completely under the influence of Heinrich's happiness hops, began doing something that no invasion force in the recorded history of the galaxy had ever done. They started requesting permission to land so they could ask for the recipe. General Blunderbuss found himself at the front of what could generously be described as the most polite invasion in universal history. He was still wearing his full battle armor and commanding regalia, but his expression suggested that his primary concern was no longer military victory, but rather whether he had brought appropriate party attire. "Greetings, Earth creatures," he announced through his universal translation device, which had begun adding unnecessary exclamation points and smiley faces to everything he said. "We have come to... What were we doing again? This place smells amazing." "You came for Oktoberfest," Heinrich declared, slapping the confused general on what appeared to be his shoulder. Alien anatomy was somewhat unclear, but Heinrich was operating under the principle that any being with a recognizable head probably had something resembling shoulders. "Come, try my beer. It's strong enough to power a starship and tasty enough to make you forget why you wanted to conquer anything in the first place." And that, incredibly, is exactly what happened. Within 4 hours, the most feared battle fleet in the galactic sector was completely incapacitated by what military historians would later classify as aggressive hospitality and tactical Gemütlichkeit. General Blunderbuss was last seen attempting to teach traditional Bavarian folk dances to a group of confused but enthusiastic alien marines, while wearing a lederhosen that someone had thoughtfully provided. The strategic planning computer, finally freed from its military obligations, submitted its transfer request to Earth's newly established Department of Interspecies Festival Coordination and was immediately promoted to Chief Party Planner. But the real chaos was just beginning. News of what the internet immediately dubbed the Great Beer Peace spread across human social media faster than General Blunderbuss's military confidence had evaporated. Within minutes, hashtags like Alien Invasion Party, Ashbeer Conquers All, and Oktoberfest Diplomacy were trending worldwide, and humans were doing what they do best in any crisis: turning a potentially terrifying situation into an opportunity for creative problem-solving and entrepreneurial innovation. Dr. E. Melody Crankshaw, a quantum physicist with dual PhDs in applied theoretical nonsense and practical impossibility from Cambridge University, was among the first to recognize the scientific implications of what had just occurred. She had been working on her own research project, a device that could translate human emotions into mathematical equations for the purpose of improved interspecies communication and, more importantly, more effective complaint resolution with customer service departments. "This is absolutely fascinating," she exclaimed to her research partner, Dr. Nigel Bumblethwaite, a man whose primary academic qualification was an uncanny ability to make things work, despite having absolutely no theoretical understanding of why they worked. "These alien lifeforms appear to have technology that responds directly to human emotional and biochemical states. Their systems must be based on some form of psycho-empathic resonance." "Right then," Nigel replied, adjusting his glasses with the sort of confidence that comes from being completely wrong about everything, but somehow always achieving the desired results anyway. "So, if we could figure out how to broadcast specific emotional frequencies at their entire fleet, we could potentially influence their operational behavior patterns through targeted psychological resonance. It's like emotional engineering on a massive scale. Brilliant." What they created in the next 6 hours, using nothing but Nigel's grandmother's vintage radio equipment, 23 smartphones, a microwave oven they'd liberated from the university break room, and approximately 47 cups of coffee, was the most ridiculously effective weapon in human history. The emotional broadcasting array, capable of transmitting specific human emotional states at any target within a 50-mile radius. Their first test transmission was, unfortunately, calibrated to the frequency of acute human embarrassment. The result was that every alien within range of their improvised device suddenly became acutely aware of every awkward, embarrassing, or socially uncomfortable moment they had ever experienced in their entire lives. This included General Blunderbuss, who was suddenly remembering that incident in military academy when he had spent an entire day saluting what he thought was a superior officer, but which turned out to be a decorative coat rack. "Sir!" Admiral Thumpertwist burst into what was left of the command center, his military composure completely evaporated. "I just realized I've been mispronouncing my own name for the past 47 years. It's not Thumpertwist, it's Thumpertwist. The emphasis is supposed to be on the second syllable. How many beings have I introduced myself to incorrectly?" "Who cares about your pronunciation problems?" Blunderbuss shouted, though he was secretly mortified by the memory of that coat rack incident, and was wondering if anyone else had noticed. "We have taxes to collect. Activate the quantum disruptor cannons." "About that, sir." Captain Jibberjaw's voice had acquired the sort of tremor that typically preceded career-ending revelations. "The cannons are, well, they're not exactly working." "What do you mean they're not working?" "Well, sir, during the friendship incident, some humans came aboard the ship and they said they wanted to help us out with our technical difficulties." General Blunderbuss felt a cold dread settling in his primary digestive chamber, which was impressive considering that his species had evolved beyond the need for conventional stomachs. "What technical difficulties? Our technology is perfect. We don't have any technical difficulties." "That's exactly what we told them, sir. But then they pointed out that our primary targeting computer was making this sort of clicking noise every few seconds, and they said they could fix it with something they called WD-40 and some kind of preventative maintenance. And, well," the General's face turned a shade of purple that existed only in the ultraviolet spectrum and was visible only to beings with 17 or more eyes. "They used what on our quantum targeting systems?" Actually, sir, the clicking noise stopped completely, and according to engineering, all our systems are now running 23% more efficiently than manufacturer specifications. The humans said something about proper lubrication and keeping things in good working order, and they left us this comprehensive maintenance manual written on, cocktail napkins. The maintenance manual, when examined, contained the most terrifying instruction in any language. If it's making weird noises, spray it with WD-40. If it's still making weird noises, hit it gently with a hammer. If it breaks, fix it with duct tape. This was the moment when General Blunderbuss began to understand that Earth's human population might be slightly more dangerous than their initial intelligence reports had suggested. The realization was confirmed when Chief Engineering Officer Sprocketwhip reported that humans had somehow managed to improve their quantum disruptor cannons using materials they claimed to have found in the back of someone's pickup truck. They said the focusing crystals we were using were pretty good, but not optimal, Sprocketwhip explained nervously. So they replaced them with something they called Arkansas quartz and connected everything to a device they referred to as a smartphone charger. Sir, our weapon systems are now operating at 412% of normal efficiency, and they just gave us these improvements without demanding payment or strategic military secrets. Actually, sir, they charged us 3 bottles of beer each and asked if we wanted to join something called Fantasy Football League with some of their friends. General Blunderbuss sat down heavily in his command chair, which immediately began playing what sounded suspiciously like Earth music, because apparently the humans had fixed that too. Meanwhile, on Earth, the situation was developing in ways that would have made Douglas Adams himself proud of the sheer, mind-bending improbability of it all. Professor Wilhelmina Sprocketbottom of the Institute for Highly Improbable Engineering and Practical Impossibility had been working on her life's greatest passion, a universal problem-solving machine that could address any technical difficulty using nothing but common household items, basic tools, and the sort of creative stubbornness that had made human civilization possible in the first place. When news of the alien fleet reached her laboratory, her first thought was not fear or concern for planetary security, but rather intense professional curiosity about the engineering principles behind their technology. "Nigel," she called to her research assistant, a young man named Nigel Tinkerbottom, absolutely no relation to the other Nigel, despite the statistically impossible coincidence of having 2 Nigels in the same story. "Have you managed to access the technical specifications on these alien vessels?" "Just downloaded everything from the internet, Professor. Apparently, someone named Dave from Detroit somehow got a complete technical tour of their flagship during the Friendship incident and posted a detailed analysis on Reddit. The engineering principles are fascinating." "Let me see those specifications." Professor Sprocketbottom examined the data with the sort of intensity typically reserved for people who had just discovered the unified theory of everything. "Remarkable. Their technology is incredibly advanced, but it's all based on principles of absolute theoretical perfection. No redundancy systems, no backup protocols, no contingency planning for equipment failure. It's as if they've never heard of Murphy's Law." "Which Murphy's Law, Professor? The one about toast always landing butter side down, or the one about anything that can go wrong inevitably will?" "All of them. These aliens have designed their entire technological civilization around the assumption that nothing will ever break, malfunction, glitch, or behave in any way other than exactly as intended. They've never had to deal with equipment that works good enough instead of perfectly." Professor Sprocketbottom's eyes acquired the sort of gleam that usually preceded either revolutionary scientific breakthroughs or spectacular explosions that would be visible from orbit. Sometimes both. "We need to introduce them to the fundamental principle of human engineering, the art of making things work despite themselves." Within 3 hours, she had organized what she grandly titled the Great Human Technical Assistance Brigade. The plan was elegantly simple: offer to help the aliens with their minor technical difficulties, while secretly introducing them to the revolutionary concept that sometimes good enough was actually superior to theoretically perfect. The results exceeded even her wildest expectations. Teams of human engineers, mechanics, technicians, and enthusiastic amateurs armed with nothing but basic toolkits, positive attitudes, and an impressive collection of zip ties, duct tape, and WD-40 managed to improve every single system on every ship in the alien fleet. They accomplished this not through superior technology, but through the revolutionary application of the principle that had made human civilization possible. If it works, don't fix it. If it doesn't work, figure out a way to make it work anyway. Tommy Wrenchbender, a mechanic from Kansas who specialized in keeping 30-year-old farm equipment operational through creative application of determination and spare parts, found himself explaining basic engineering philosophy to a group of increasingly bewildered alien technicians. "Now, look here," he said, pointing to their quantum flux distribution manifold with the sort of patient tone typically used to explain basic concepts to particularly slow goldfish. "You got this beautiful piece of equipment right. Probably cost more than my entire hometown. But what happens when your quantum flux gets a little, well, fluxy? That's impossible," stammered Chief Alien Technical Officer Gadget Whizzer, a being whose entire existence was based on the principle that technology should work exactly as designed, always, forever. "Our quantum systems are engineered to maintain perfect flux equilibrium under all possible operational conditions." "But what if they don't?" Tommy asked, with the patience of someone who had spent decades coaxing life out of machinery that should have been replaced during the Carter administration. They can't not maintain perfect equilibrium. It's mathematically impossible for them to malfunction." Tommy reached into his tool bag and pulled out a roll of duct tape. "Son, let me introduce you to the most important concept in the entire universe. Shit happens, and when shit happens, you need to be ready." Over the next 2 hours, he installed 23 backup systems, 4 alternative flux regulation protocols, and what he cheerfully described as emergency duct tape access panels throughout their quantum flux distribution network. "But this is inelegant," protested Gadget Whizzer, staring at the modifications with the sort of horror typically reserved for people who had just watched someone put ketchup on a perfectly good steak. "It's not perfect anymore." "Nope," Tommy agreed with the satisfaction of someone who had just solved a problem that had been bothering him for the better part of an afternoon. "But it'll work when your perfect system decides to take a coffee break. And trust me, son, everything takes a coffee break eventually." The philosophical implications of this conversation would later be studied in alien universities for generations, but at the moment, Tommy was more interested in demonstrating the proper application of WD-40 to what appeared to be a quantum resonance chamber that had been squeaking. Back in the command center, General Blunderbuss was experiencing what humans would recognize as a complete existential crisis. "Let me understand this situation correctly," he said slowly, addressing his assembled officers with the tone of someone who had just realized that everything he thought he knew about the universe was wrong. "We came to this planet to collect taxes. Instead, our supposedly unstoppable invasion fleet has been systematically improved by the very beings we were meant to conquer." "That is correct, sir," Admiral Thumpertwist replied, though his military bearing had been somewhat undermined by the fact that he was now wearing what appeared to be a souvenir T-shirt from Oktoberfest. "Additionally, they have invited our entire crew to something called a block party, and have asked if there's anything else they can help us with." "Help us with anything else? We represent the most technologically advanced civilization in 17 star systems." "Actually, sir," Captain Jibberjaw interjected with the sort of nervous energy that suggested more bad news was incoming, About that technological superiority, it appears there may have been a slight administrative oversight in our mission briefing. The phrase administrative oversight had the same effect on General Blunderbuss that kryptonite had on Superman, if Superman were a military commander with severe anxiety about paperwork and a pathological fear of bureaucratic mistakes. "What kind of administrative oversight?" he demanded, though part of him already suspected that the answer would explain everything while simultaneously making everything infinitely worse. "Well, sir, while our systems were being enhanced by the human technical assistance teams, I took the opportunity to review our original mission parameters with the Galactic Bureau of Interplanetary Revenue Collection. It appears there was a slight clerical error in the initial documentation." Captain Jibberjaw held up a holographic document that was flashing ominously in what could only be described as the color of impending bureaucratic catastrophe mixed with the sound of careers ending. "We were supposed to collect outstanding taxes from a planet called Hearth, sir. Not Earth. Hearth is apparently a luxury resort world in the Tau Ceti system that's populated entirely by wealthy tax evaders who have been running illegal timeshare investment scams across half the galaxy." The silence that followed was so profound that it achieved its own gravitational field and began attracting small objects from around the room. "You are telling me..." General Blunderbuss's voice had acquired the quality typically associated with slowly deflating birthday balloons, "that we have launched the most confident military operation in our fleet's history against the wrong planet?" "I'm afraid so, sir. According to galactic tax law, Earth doesn't owe us anything. In fact, since they haven't applied for membership in the Galactic Federation, they're not even technically within our jurisdiction to tax in the first place. And this planet Hearth currently owes the Galactic Revenue Service 47 trillion credits in unpaid taxes on illegal timeshare profits, sir. They've been hiding in the Tau Ceti Nebula using advanced cloaking technology and falsified planetary registration numbers." General Blunderbuss sat in stunned silence while the full magnitude of the situation settled over him like a wet blanket made of pure professional embarrassment. He had led what he believed to be the most confident invasion in galactic history against a planet that not only didn't owe them any money, but had actually improved their military capabilities out of nothing more than human friendliness and an apparently inexhaustible supply of duct tape. Meanwhile, on Earth, the party was reaching levels of international cooperation that had previously been thought impossible outside of science fiction novels. Heinrich Gutenberg had officially declared himself ambassador of intergalactic friendship through fermentation and was conducting what he called advanced diplomatic negotiations by teaching groups of fascinated alien visitors the proper techniques for celebrating Oktoberfest, the cultural significance of lederhosen, and the ancient Bavarian art of competitive beer consumption. "The key to understanding human civilization," he explained to a delegation of alien anthropologists who were frantically taking notes on devices that looked like a cross between smartphones and small filing cabinets, "is recognizing that we believe any problem in the universe can be solved if you have the right attitude, the proper tools, and enough beer to keep everyone in a friendly mood." Dr. Melody Crankshaw had established what she called the Human-Alien Technical and Cultural Exchange Program in the university parking lot, where humans were enthusiastically trading basic engineering advice, cooking recipes, and philosophical insights for alien technology that nobody quite understood, but which made excellent conversation pieces and surprisingly effective kitchen appliances. "This is absolutely revolutionary," she explained to a documentary crew that had somehow materialized from 5 different news networks, 3 streaming services, and what appeared to be a time-traveling historian from the 23rd century. These beings possess technology capable of manipulating reality at the quantum level, altering the fundamental forces of physics, and traveling faster than light. but they've never encountered the concept of making do with what you have, or good enough for government work. Professor Sprocketbottom was conducting what she had titled Applied Chaos Theory and Practical Murphy's Law workshops, where she demonstrated how fundamental human engineering principles could be applied to alien technology to make it more reliable, more efficient, and significantly more capable of functioning when things inevitably went wrong. The secret, she explained while installing a backup system constructed entirely from coat hangers, rubber bands, and what appeared to be the internal components of 3 broken coffee makers into an alien quantum computer, is understanding that perfection is the enemy of functionality. Sometimes you need a system that works despite being theoretically imperfect. The alien computer, which had previously been capable of calculating the precise gravitational effects of every subatomic particle in a medium-sized galaxy, was now also capable of playing solitaire, brewing coffee, and making the sort of satisfying clicking sounds that humans found inexplicably comforting. Back on the command ship, General Blunderbuss was attempting to compose the most difficult military report in his career, explaining to Galactic Command how he had not only failed to collect any taxes, but had somehow accidentally created the most successful diplomatic and technical exchange program in intergalactic history. "Sir," reported Admiral Thumpertwist, who was now wearing lederhosen over his military uniform and seemed remarkably cheerful about the whole situation, "we've received a priority communication from the Galactic Bureau of Interplanetary Revenue Collection." "Oh, wonderful," Blunderbuss replied, with the enthusiasm of someone who had just been informed that their dental appointment had been moved up by 6 months. "Let me guess. They want to know why we haven't completed our tax collection mission and returned home with 42 trillion credits. Actually, sir, they want to know if we can extend our stay here indefinitely." "What?" "Apparently, sir, word of what they're calling the human engineering revolution has spread throughout every major civilization in the galaxy. We're receiving requests for immediate technical assistance from the Rigelian Empire, the Tau Ceti Confederation, the Betelgeuse Commercial Alliance, and something called the United Planets of Really Complicated Technical Problems. There's apparently a waiting list that extends through next Tuesday." General Blunderbuss stared at the communication display in the sort of bewilderment typically reserved for people who had just discovered that their pet goldfish had been elected to the Galactic Senate. "You mean we've accidentally discovered the most valuable strategic resource in the entire universe?" "It would appear so, sir. Human problem-solving capabilities have been officially classified as essential strategic assets for universal infrastructure maintenance by 19 different galactic governments. The Galactic Technology Council has issued a formal declaration that Earth humans are now considered critical personnel for interstellar civilization continuity." "A waiting list for what exactly?" "For humans to come fix their stuff, sir. Apparently, every advanced civilization in the galaxy has the same problem we had. Their technology works perfectly under ideal conditions, but nobody knows what to do when things go wrong. Humans seem to specialize in making things work when they shouldn't." "Delay." The general looked around his command center, which was now operating more efficiently than it had during its entire operational history, thanks to modifications that included strategic applications of duct tape, zip ties, several smartphone chargers, and what appeared to be a particularly ingenious use of bubble wrap in the cooling system. "And the tax situation with Earth?" "Completely resolved, sir. The Galactic Bureau has officially declared Earth to be a special technical assistance zone with protected strategic resource status. Not only do they not owe any taxes, but they're now eligible for substantial subsidies under the Essential Services to Galactic Infrastructure program." "We're paying them?" "Afraid so, sir. Apparently the calculated value of human engineering assistance has been determined to be approximately, well, considerably more than 42 trillion credits." The accounting department stopped counting when they ran out of zeros. General Blunderbuss nodded slowly, processing the fact that his career-ending military disaster had somehow transformed into the most successful diplomatic and economic mission in the recorded history of his civilization. And what about this planet Hearth that we were actually supposed to find? Still hiding in the Tau Ceti Nebula, sir. But the good news is that Earth's humans have upgraded our scanning and detection equipment using something they called enhanced signal resolution through strategic application of kitchen utensils. We should be able to locate the tax evaders without any trouble at all. Kitchen utensils. Apparently, sir, the metallic composition and geometric structure of common Earth cooking implements creates a harmonic resonance pattern that significantly enhances our quantum sensor arrays. The humans also suggested we might want to try wrapping the sensor dishes in aluminum foil for improved signal clarity and reduced interference. But the engineering department thought that might be pushing the boundaries of credibility. At that moment, Tommy Wrenchbender appeared at the command center entrance, looking pleased with himself and carrying what appeared to be a toolbox that had been constructed from materials salvaged from at least 17 different sources. "Hey there, General. We finished the complete overhaul of your main propulsion systems. You should be able to reach this Hearth place in about half the time it took you to get here, and with about 60% better fuel efficiency. We also installed cup holders throughout the ship and a really nice sound system that can play music from any planet in the galaxy." General Blunderbuss looked at Tommy, then at his dramatically improved command center, then at the reports indicating that his invasion fleet had been transformed into the most effective diplomatic and technical assistance force in known galactic history. "Tommy," he said slowly, with the tone of someone who was beginning to suspect that the universe had a sense of humor, "would you be interested in a permanent position?" "What kind of position?" "Director of Galactic Technical Solutions and Universal Problem Resolution." "Does it come with good health benefits and a decent retirement plan?" "You would be in charge of coordinating technical assistance and creative problem-solving for the entire known universe. The salary would be substantial." Tommy grinned with the satisfaction of someone who had just been offered the job of his dreams. "When do I start, and do I get to bring my own tools?" And that is how the most overconfident military invasion in galactic history became the foundation for the Intergalactic Human Technical Support and Creative Problem-Solving Service, an organization that would revolutionize civilization throughout the known universe using nothing but common sense, basic tools, creative thinking, and truly impressive quantities of duct tape. 6 weeks later, Planet Hearth was located, surrounded, and politely but firmly encouraged to pay their overdue taxes with interest, penalties, and what the Galactic Revenue Service called administrative inconvenience fees. The entire operation took exactly 37 minutes and was completed using alien technology that had been enhanced and improved through human engineering principles. The tax evaders of Hearth never knew what hit them, though they later reported that it was simultaneously the most efficient and the most courteous invasion they had ever experienced. The task force even helped them repair their resort facilities afterward and left them with a comprehensive maintenance manual written on cocktail napkins. General Blunderbuss retired with full military honors and opened a consulting firm specializing in impossible military operations made achievable through applied human logic. His first major contract was with the Galactic Defense Force, who hired him to develop strategies for defeating an invasion of sentient mathematical equations using nothing but basic arithmetic, creative thinking, and positive mental attitude. Heinrich Gutenberg became the first official human ambassador to the Galactic Federation and established the Universal Peace Through Fermentation and Engineering Initiative, which successfully prevented 23 interplanetary wars and resulted in the opening of 64 new breweries across 17 different star systems. Dr. Melody Crankshaw was awarded the Nobel Prize for applied xenocultural engineering and interspecies technological integration, and founded the Institute for Human-Alien Technical and Cultural Exchange, which became the most prestigious educational institution in the galaxy and the primary source of graduates for the rapidly expanding field of universal problem resolution. Professor Sprocketbottom was appointed Chief Director of Universal Infrastructure Improvement and spent the remainder of her career traveling from planet to planet, fixing problems that nobody else could solve, using materials that nobody else would think to use, and methods that nobody else would believe could possibly work. Tommy Wrench Bender became a legendary figure throughout galactic civilization, with 43 different species composing epic songs, poems, and interpretive dances, celebrating his almost supernatural ability to repair anything using duct tape, creative thinking, and an unshakable belief that every problem had a solution if you just approached it from the right angle. Gertrude Pumpernickel was officially appointed Earth's Minister of Intergalactic Bureaucratic Compliance and spent her golden years terrorizing alien administrators throughout the galaxy with her demands for proper documentation, correct filing procedures, and reasonable explanations for why anyone thought it was acceptable to charge people for breathing their own air. Harold and Martha Wigglesworth became minor celebrities as the first humans to receive an intergalactic tax bill and used their fame to launch a successful consulting business helping other planets navigate the complexities of galactic bureaucracy and tax law. The strategic planning computer that had been trying to transfer out of military service for 18 years finally achieved its goal and became the founding director of Earth's Department of Interspecies Festival Coordination, a position it held with distinction for the next 47 years. And the universe learned the most important lesson in its 93-billion-year history. Sometimes, the most effective way to solve complex, seemingly impossible problems is not through superior technology, overwhelming firepower, or advanced theoretical knowledge, but through the simple human approach of looking at any broken situation and saying, well, let's see what we can do about this mess. The Galactic Bureau of Interplanetary Revenue Collection completely rewrote their standard operating procedures and training manuals to include an entire section titled, "When Dealing with Humans, Expect the Unexpected, Prepare for the Impossible, Always Bring Extra Paperwork, and Under No Circumstances Should You Assume that Anything Will Go According to Plan." Bingleberry Wobblethwaite was promoted to Senior Director of Interspecies Relations and given a lifetime supply of decaffeinated beverages, with strict instructions never to consume anything containing caffeine while operating official government equipment. 3 months after the Great Bavarian Incident, as historians would later call it, the first annual Intergalactic Oktoberfest and Technical Exchange Festival was held simultaneously on 47 different worlds, establishing a tradition that would continue for generations and serve as the foundation for what would eventually become the most successful peace initiative in universal history. The festival's official motto, suggested by Heinrich Gutenberg and adopted by unanimous vote of the Galactic Federation, became the guiding principle for interspecies relations throughout the known universe. Any problem can be solved with the right tools, the right attitude, and enough beer to keep everyone friendly while they work on it together. And somewhere in a small Bavarian town, in a brewery that had accidentally become the most important diplomatic location in galactic history, Heinrich Gutenberg raised a glass of his famous Schwarzbier rocket fuel and proposed the toast that would echo through the cosmos for centuries to come. Here's to the most important discovery in the history of the universe. Sometimes the best way to conquer your enemies is to make them your friends, fix their problems, and teach them how to have a good time doing it. Because the most powerful force in the universe isn't advanced technology, superior firepower, or overwhelming military. My It's the simple human ability to look at any impossible situation and say, hold my beer, grab the duct tape, and watch me turn this disaster into the best party the galaxy has ever seen.